thank you so much for having me. You're quite welcome. It's a pleasure. I'm Marcus Collins. I have the fortunate pleasure of having one foot in the world of academia and one foot in the world of practice. I'm a marketing professor at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, here in the States. And I'm also the head of the chief strategy officer at Wyden and Kennedy, New York, which is a global advertising agency, but I run strategy in the New York office. And I get a chance to put ideas in the world as an advertiser and put people in the world as an academic, which is just awesome. Sure. I would actually say that I sit at the crossroads of culture and marketing, and music just happens to be one of the most powerful vehicles that got me there. So I studied engineering undergrad in university. I got my undergraduate degree studying materials engineering, though I didn't think I really wanted to do that. Actually, I knew I didn't want to do that. My parents didn't care. So I had to finish my degree engineering. And after I graduated from undergrad, I went into the music industry. I worked at Universal Music Group, which is an international record label, and then started my own company in the world of music, which was okay until it wasn't. And I decided to go back to school to get my MBA, to get my master's in business. And it was at which point I just got very curious about the world of digital as a disruptor to business. After getting my MBA, I went to go work at Apple doing partner marketing at iTunes, right? Which we now know as Apple Music. But then it was iTunes, and I managed our relationship with Nike Sports Music. And during this time, it was sort of like the perfect place for me. I'm doing marketing and music, as you said, like that convergence is really where I thought my sweet spot was. And I happened to meet a gentleman by the name of Matthew Knowles, who has a daughter by the name of Beyonce Knowles. I don't know if you guys know her in France.
Oh, we don't. Nobody knows Beyonce. Of course, no.
Yes. So I meet Matthew Knowles, and Matthew says, let me get this straight. You were an engineer, and then you start a music company, and you have an MBA, and you work at Apple, and you're Black? Dude, who are you? Like, you're a unicorn. Like, you don't exist. It's like, I exist. I'm real. And he says, you should run digital strategy for Beyonce. And I said, oh, yes, I should totally do that.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
ran digital strategy for Beyonce in New York, which was phenomenal. And this is during the I Am Sasha Fierce days. So this is like single ladies,
Wow.
the ring on it. Like, it's like, yes. So this is like such amazing time to be in the Beyonce business. Well, let's be honest. There's never a bad time to be in the Beyonce business.
Yeah.
But this was a special time because Beyonce was going from being Beyonce, the recording artist, to Queen Bee, the icon. I got a chance to see it, like to see it happen, behind the scenes, which is pretty fascinating. Probably, one of the most unique things I've done in my career, having to be able to be that close, like that close to the sun and see it all happen. And so now I'm really in the crossroads or the crosshairs of marketing and music. And what I realized while at record labels with the biggest artists on the planet, arguably at the time, that marketers and advertisers were doing a better job of breaking music artists than record labels were. The traditional means by which record labels were bringing artists to market, advertisers are doing a better job of that. I mean, Apple is a great example. The iTunes ads or the iPod ads were breaking new artists like Vice, for instance, or Matt and Kim. And I just felt like, one, where do you go after work with Beyonce? Like, what's next?
Oh
Not
yeah.
places. Everything else is
Yeah.
kind of down for work with Beyonce, right? So there's that. The second thing, if I'm just being honest, I look in the mirror and wonder, how good am I? Truthfully, I had so much success working with her, but I don't know how much of that success was due to me. Like, I felt like Beyonce was going to be successful with or without me. Clearly, without me, she's been more than just fine. So I wondered, like, how good am I? And I want to test it out to see. So I decided to go into the world of advertising. I went to a pure play social media agency. So the agency only focused on digital and social media. And that was really helpful. It was sort of like boot camp for social media marketing. And I really cut my teeth there at an agency called Big Fuel. I'm still thinking I'm a music guy, but getting closer to this world of digital and social while also working in marketing. And the biggest inflection point rather, happened when I met Steve Stout. Steve Stout, who was an
Mm.
advertising executive. So he was responsible with Jimmy Iovine at Interscope for signing Eminem, for signing Will Smith. And actually, this is a really good story. I'm sidebar just for a moment.
Wow, 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 wow. We're
So
having good stuff now.
yeah,
I'm
so
listening.
here's how the legend goes. Will Smith gets signed by Interscope. Right? He was at Jive, got dropped from Jive, got signed by Interscope, and he has this movie coming out called Men in Black, and
Wow.
they released the soundtrack for Men in Black, and the soundtrack kills. Right, Will Smith has the Men in Black song, all of the songs on there. The soundtrack goes like multiple times platinum, maybe diamond. It's unbelievable, right? 10 million records sold. It sold a lot globally. And my understanding is that the story goes, the folks at the record label are partying, like they're enjoying this new success with the Men in Black soundtrack when the movie comes out. And while they're celebrating, they see another group of people celebrating, and they go, "Who are those guys?" Because those guys like really, and they say, "Oh, those are the folks at Ray-Ban, the sunglasses company." And they
Crazy.
go, "Wow, what were they so excited about?" It's like, "Oh, they sold like 17 million sunglasses because of some crazy number, because of Will Smith wearing the sunglasses in the movie Men in Black, where he says, 'I make these look good.'" And Steve Stout originally immediately thought, "Oh my goodness, I sold say 10 million records that cost $17 for people to buy it. They sold 17 million sunglasses and it costs $150. I'm in the wrong business." Not
Wow.
only that, those sunglasses don't have the ego that's associated with the music business.
Mm.
So he left music, went into advertising, started this advertising agency with Jimmy Iovine as a silent partner, and Jay-Z, who was his friend and
Mm.
silent partner, called Translation. And I meet Steve Stout, and he introduces me to a new way of seeing the world. What I thought was about music and marketing and digital and social, he widened the aperture for me and said, this is about culture. And it completely changed the way I see the world. Right. And it's really at the convergence of marketing and culture that I operate. Right. Like I would argue that consumption at its very core is a cultural act. What we buy, where we go, what we do, how we style ourselves, how we adorn ourselves, all these things are byproducts to our cultural subscription. So at Translation, that's the work that I did, working with brands like Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, Budweiser, uh, Google, McDonald's, right? These are international, massive, massive brands. And I started getting really interested in culture, understanding human behavior. So I started doing a lot of reading, a lot of self-directed research, started teaching at NYU while I was at New York University, while I was at Translation. My family and I moved back to Michigan because we had our eldest daughter, Georgia. So I started working at another agency while teaching at the University of Michigan, getting really excited about understanding people, so much so that I started my doctorate studying.
Yeah, I know. Congratulations. That
Thank
was
you so
amazing. I
much.
saw that on LinkedIn. You must be
Yeah,
so happy.
and
Such
I'm
an achievement.
relieved.
Oh, beautiful.
I started my doctoral program at Temple University here in the States while teaching at the Rural Business University of Michigan and
Wow.
working at donor. I have a very supportive wife, right? So working on these things, and it's really started to bring academia into the fold as I think about culture and marketing. And now having the doctorate, having a very celebrated career, which has been great. I joined Wyden Kennedy, who arguably are the best advertisers on the planet, the best cultural impact storytellers on the planet when it comes to creativity. And that's really kind of where I sit. Culture, and marketing, how these two things play together and what it means, not just for how we consume, but sort of how we show up in the world as citizens. You're far too kind. Thank you so much. It's very flattering.
I'm sorry for the long question,
No,
but
that's good. It's good. And what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of the lead up to sort of answer the question. I mean, you're right. If you ask marketers to define marketing, if you ask 20 marketers, you get 30 different answers, right? Because we don't have very great with language, the way we describe things. And I believe that language is so important because it allows us to create some saliency. So we know what we're talking about. So we can all talk about it concretely or concurrently. So when I think about marketing, I think about the definition from the 1455 Oxford English Dictionary, and it defines marketing as to sell or go to market. I like that, to go to market, right? Okay, cool.
Exactly.
So we'll phrase the question, what is the market? Well, the market is people, right? We talk about market demand, market response, market behavior. We talk about people demand, people response, people behavior. So when we go to market, we're going to the people, right? Marketing is market. Awesome. So why do we go to market? Well, we go to market to get people to adopt behavior, get people to move, right? Don't drink this, drink that. Don't go here, go there. Don't buy his shoes, buy my shoes. Don't vote for him, vote for her. Don't throw away your trash, recycle it. Like everything we do is in service of getting people to move. Awesome. Well, what influences us the most? People.
That's so true. Yeah.
People who are like us, people who subscribe to the same cultural characteristics, they subscribe to the same ideologies, they are like us. So one puts it this way, that culture moves forward on the basis of one simple question: do people like me do something like this? The answer is yes, I do. If the answer is no, I don't. And we make that decision hundreds of times a day. So the question becomes, how do we activate the network of people in such a way that I see people like me take on the behavior? And when people like me take on the behavior, I'm more inclined to do it. Why? Because this is what we're wired to do. This is why the network effect becomes so unbelievably powerful, because we create social proof. We create receipts of identity that are reinforced through the social web that we live in, right? Whether it's in person or zeros and ones or a combination of the two. So when we think about how a brand behaves or how a brand taps into this, a brand taps into this by activating a network of people who use the brand as identity marks, use the brand as receipts or badge of who they are. So you take State Farm, for instance. So State Farm is they're an insurance company. They make the majority of their money through car insurance, but they also insure homes. They insure other like boats and whatnot. They have financial services, etc. But auto insurance is their driver. So we had them as a client, and we're looking at, so like, what do you believe, right? Because if we're going to activate networks, we don't activate networks based on value propositions. Like, my razor sharper, my battery lasts longer, my car. Activate networks because of congruence of belief, of ideological belief. The brand has a set of cultural characteristics, and then we tap into a network of people who have similar cultural characteristics, so that people use the brand to communicate their identity. Well, what does this brand believe? Sure, we cover your stuff, but like, why do we do it in a Simon Sinek-like way? What's the belief, the why? I call it the conviction, the ideology, right? The point of view of the brand. And when we, really did some excavation on what State Farm is all about, it really summed up to one thing. State Farm helps people make better decisions so they can live life more confidently every day. State Farm is about helping people live life more confidently every day. How do they do it? By having 15,000 expert agents everywhere, anywhere, however you need them, whenever you need them, so that you can make better decisions and live life more confidently. This will happen to provide insurance. This will happen to cover your stuff. This will happen to provide financial services. So with that as like the foundation, we started looking at where State Farm had sponsorships, where they were showing up, where they were spending money. And the National Basketball Association, the NBA, became one really big sort of outlier. They spent an ungodly sum of money with the NBA.
Already before you,
yeah, they were already there, but they were just wrapping backboards and like jumbotrons, like step and repeats. They weren't doing anything meaningful. They knew that, which is why they said, help us with this. And so fortunately for us, we took the brand's conviction, its belief,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of helping people, and we said, oh, this is actually kind of easy because there's a statistic in the game of basketball that's all about helping people, the assist.
That
Oh,
is so true.
the assist, right? The assist gives us an entree, it gives us license, it gives us permission to be a part of culture through the vehicle that is basketball, through the vehicle of sport. And we're going to do this through the brand's conviction, helping people, and a statistic inside the sport that's all about helping people as well, the assist. So if you don't know, the assist is when I pass the ball to someone to score.
Mm-hmm.
That person gets the score. So you made 2 points, I get the assist, right? So I benefit from helping you help the team. So we said, that's great because the assist isn't sexy. It's not like cool. No one tunes in to like watch the assist of the week. Nobody does. Like, right. Just like no one thinks that insurance is sexy or cool. So there's a really good congruence happening here. So with that, as I mean, that was like the rocket fuel to get us going. And in most gameplay, the point guard, right, he or she typically has most of the assists in the game, typically passing the ball off, getting the gameplay happening. So we thought, well, who is the biggest point guard in the NBA at the time? And at the time, it was Chris Paul, who was
Wow.
playing with the Clippers. So we said, okay, let's partner with Chris Paul on this. Well, what will we do? We had a lot of ideas. And the team, we're thinking about like what can make this interesting. And we all were like really big fans of the Blair Witch Project. And I remember the Blair Witch Project from the handheld movie, point of view movie where 3 kids go in the woods to film the Burkittsville witch to get, the documentary. They don't come out a year later. You find their stuff. Is it real? And this like completely changed like how movies were made, especially horror movies, like completely changed it, right? This, I think it only cost them $60,000 to make the film, and it grossed like $260 million.
That's crazy, yeah.
Unbelievable. So we're all big fans of this film, and we thought to ourselves, what if we Blair Witch Project this thing? That is, what if we made people believe that Chris Paul had a twin brother named Cliff Paul, but they were separated at birth? And Chris Paul went on to be an all-star NBA player, point guard who passes out assists. Cliff Paul goes on to be an all-star State Farm agent that passes out assists as an agent.
That's so brilliant. I love
it. George Lowenstein talks about this idea of creating a gap in knowledge. He says that cognitive deprivation, that is this unknowing, not knowing, it forces us to like lean in because we have to close that gap in knowledge. So creating a gap in knowledge among hardcore NBA fans allows us to activate these people to lean in, start discourse, start conversation, which allows the campaign to propagate. And it was massive for us, huge. Yeah, so I'm in the same camp as you. Like, I'm not a huge fan of advertising either. In fact, when I decided to come on at Wieden Kennedy, when I met with the guys who run the shop in New York, Neil and Carl, and they asked me like, why would you want to go back to another agency? And I was like, I don't want to do advertising. I'm not excited about advertising. I am excited, however, about making cultural product. I think those things are very different, right? Cultural product are the ways by which we make our cultural subscription material, right? The brands we wear, the communications that we take on, the way we behave. These are ways that we exercise our cultural subscription, and we use cultural product to communicate it. The music we listen to, the dances we take on, the movies we watch, the fashion that we adorn, and the brands and branded products that we consume. That's what I'm interested in. And if that's a 60-second spot, if it's a 60-second TV spot, cool. If it's a banner, cool. If it's a tweet, I'm cool with that too, right? It's not the output that I'm interested in, it's the outcomes. And the outcomes for me is all about cultural impact. And the beautiful part about cultural impact is that there is a ripple effect. There's a cascade effect that happens because of the network propagation that happens between people. is that
Exactly.
it lives on beyond your media buy, right? Like advertising is very much, dependent on the media buy. You turn on the media, it's there. You turn it off, people go on
Forget
about
about it.
their life. But when we do things that are culturally impactful, it becomes a way they communicate themselves to the world, right? Not just what they wear, but what they say and how they act and how they behave. This is culture, and that's the things that I strive to impact. I mean, that's what I'm most excited about, creating cultural products. When I think about Made in America Music Festival, right? We launched this in 2012, right? 2012. So that's 9 years ago. Made in America is happening again this year. How many campaigns run over the span of almost a decade? The only time we didn't do it was last summer because of COVID. But this has become a music festival, a 2-day music festival that happens in Philadelphia, the Benjamin Franklin Parkway in Philly, where 90,000 people descend on Philadelphia to celebrate the makers, the people who make things, right? And like that is, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And I've worked with an unbelievable team of people to make it happen. But to be a part of this, I don't work on Made in America anymore. Like I haven't touched it in years. But when I see it come in my news feed or I get the email about it, like I feel this overwhelming sense of pride because I didn't create an ad. I created cultural product. Yeah, it's just like basketball, right? Like, Michael Jordan is probably the best player to ever play the game, period, hands down, at least in my opinion, the best player to ever play the game. But it wasn't until he had a team, a squad of really, really, really talented people that he began to win championships. Not just a good squad of people, but a great coach in Phil Jackson. Like it requires so much, a great organization to support how they're going to run their team. There are no these aren't done by one person's brilliance, not by any stretch at all. This is about discourse and conversation, and one person adds one thing, you go, oh man, that's great, let's use that. And it's the alchemy of brilliance that gets us to these really amazing outcomes. And when I joined Wieden+Kennedy, an interesting part, and this is being honest, selfishly, I was like, I want to know the secret. Like, how are they as good as they are for as long as they are? I mean, Wieden+Kennedy is responsible for Nike Just Do It. Like, they've been the agency of record for Nike for decades. Coke Open Happiness. Like, this is an institution within an institution. And I was really curious on how in an agency globally, right, from New York to Portland to Sao Paulo to London, Amsterdam, Mumbai, and Tokyo, how does this agency consistently? And when I found the answer out, I was one sense found because of how obvious it was, and then completely in awe when I realized how profound it is. You just try to get the best people at their craft and create an environment that allows them to be great. That's it.
So yeah.
Get the best people possible and create an environment that allowed them to be the best versions of themselves. And though that is a very simple construct, it's a very simple equation, it is terribly difficult to do. Yeah, I mean, I like the way you put it that way. I think that good marketers are curious and they understand people. I often say that the best marketers on the planet are comedians, because comedians just watch people. They go, whoa, that was interesting.
And they tell stories.
And then they go, whoa, he did it too. And then she did it. And then okay, this is a thing. There's a phenomenon happening here. And then they take that phenomenon and they try to find ways to describe it using theory. Like, what's going on here? What describes what's happening? They find an interesting way to communicate, a slant. Like Emily Dickens says it this way, tell all the truth and tell it slant, right? So they find a way to tell it slant, a story. in a very captivative way. So they identify, they observe behavior, they find a way to describe it, to make meaning of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they find a creative way to communicate it with a slant. Then they get on stage and say, "Do you notice that every time you go to the park, you do blah, 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 blah?" And you go, "I totally do that. That's so me." Of course you do, right? The best marketers understand human behavior, and they're very, very curious. Like they're always looking for the, that's interesting. Like now I tell my team this, like, like look for the, like you should be stroking your chin a lot. That's odd. That's interesting. And the idea is that getting at that observation, that helps us get to the truth. And it's the truth that we can leverage to get people to move in a predictable way, in a way that is systemic. But we got to get to the truth, which is why I love academia, because we spend so much time rigorously investigating, interrogating what we observe to get at truth. And we can leverage that truth as practitioners to influence behavior.
One truth or different truth? Because there is
I
never,
love you.
yeah.
That's so great. That's so great. I love it. That's amazing, right? So there is no objective truth, right? Truth is subjective, depending on how you see the world and the way you make meaning of the world based upon your cultural meaning making frames, right? Your worldview. And the way I think about it is that, like, if the world is a game, we're watching a game. Let's keep it basketball to like basketball. The world's a game. You're watching the game from your seats. But the game you see is different than the game that someone else sees at a different place in the arena, right? For sure. So the only way you can get the most accurate representation of the truth of the game that is society is to sit in different places. That is to adopt different perspectives, see the world differently. I had the fortunate pleasure of going to a Boston Celtics game a few years ago with a client. It was me, it was a client, and he had 4 floor seats. And I'm sitting right behind the team. Like the team is here, I'm right behind them. I could whisper in their ear if I wanted to. Amazing seats. And while I'm watching the game, never been in floor seats before, I'm watching the game. It was so hard for me to follow the game because it felt so chaotic. I was like, how do you even play it? If I were on the court, I wouldn't know what to do because it was so chaotic looking at it at the floor level. But when I'm up in the rafters where I can afford seats, when I'm higher up, the game looks so much more organized. Like I could see the play unfolding. And this is why we need perspective. You need multiple perspectives because the world looks different depending on where you sit. So we've got to change our seats in the arena to observe the gameplay that is society. No, we're horrible. We're horrible.
Okay. So why, and please help us. Give us some tips to improve.
So the first part is we're bad at understanding people because we put people in boxes. We put people in boxes that are not representative of who people are. They are byproducts of the cognitive ease that we experience of putting in those boxes. And those boxes are demographics. For instance, if I said, meet my friend Deborah. Deborah drives a minivan. Does Deborah have kids? Probably say, yeah. Do her kids play a sport? You probably say, yeah. What sport do they play? Probably soccer or football. And if I said, well, where does Deborah live? You probably say the suburbs, right? And this is what we do. I give you one data point and we map out someone's entire life, not because it's accurate, but because it's easy. And this is what demographics do. We say, let's go after millennials. One data point, their birth year within a 20-year period. And we say, they're all the same. That's ridiculous. It's like saying all women love to shop or all Black people do something fill in the blank racist. Like this is what we do, right? We put people in these boxes. And because we put them in these boxes, we don't accurately represent who they are. Therefore, when we're communicating to them, we communicate in these blunt ways that are not meaningful because they're not representative of who we. So marketers suck at that. That's the first. Secondly, we also suck when it comes to empathy. And this actually I have some grace with, because empathy is really challenging, particularly because empathy is like, it's like culture is a hard word to describe or define. I like the way Michael Ventura just defines. He says empathy is self-aware perspective taking. Right, I am purposefully adopting someone else's perspective, and I do it with full full intentionality. The thing about empathy, though, is that empathy consists of three different types of empathy. There is semantic empathy, which is just our body responds to things, right? If I see you slam your hand in the door, I go, "Oh, you okay? Don't like it hurt. You all right?" Right? And that's just, unless you're a sociopath, that's how we respond, right? Our body just responds. Then there is affective empathy, which is this notion of do unto others as you want done unto you, right? It's the golden rule, right? If you're having a bad day, I reach out to you, check on you because I'm a good person. And this is what I want you to do to me if I had a bad day. But then there's the harder empathy, which is cognitive empathy. And this is do unto others as they want done unto you, which requires understanding what people need, right? So say when you have a bad day, you don't want people calling you, you just want to be left alone. If I'm calling you now, you're like, please leave me alone, Marcus. I want to be left alone, right? The other part is that it requires me to take off my lenses and put on yours. To say, if I'm having a bad day, this is what I want. But you know what? This is what she wants, but she's having a bad day. So I behave accordingly. It requires selflessness. And unfortunately, we as marketers don't do enough of that. And this lies the tragedy of the age, as W.E.B. Du Bois puts it. Not that men are poor because we all know something about poverty. Not that men are wicked because what is good. Not that men are evil because what is wicked. Not that men are liars because what is truth. Nay, that men know so little of men. We just don't know people very well. And because of that, marketing typically sucks. Absolutely. I mean, the things you just named is all cultural product. What we watch, what we listen to, where we go. Like these things are ways to make culture material.
Yeah.
So I would say, instead of like thinking about who the target audience is, because audiences are like, they're passive groups of people. Like when you go to the movies, you're an audience. When you go to a concert, you're an audience. You're just watching information kind of wave over you, just being entertained. But we're not passive people in the world. We're very, very active and have a lot more agency than audience gives us credit for. Instead, I say you should target networks of people. If our job is to activate networks of people to get people to move, then let's target the networks of people who see the world the way we do. So the first question you ask yourself is, well, what do you believe? What's your conviction, right? For State Farm, is about helping people feel more confident. For Budweiser, it was really about Americana, like which was the new Americana, like the American dream. Like, you know, you can pursue what you want to pursue with your creative endeavors, right? What do you believe? And who are the networks of people who see the world the way you do? It's like finding your congregation. We also talk about, like, you know, find your tribe. You find your community, your tribe, your congregation of people who believe what you believe. Because when there is belief congruence, when there's ideological congruence, those people are more inclined to use your brand, use your content as ways to communicate their own identity. And that's where we want to be. Yeah. So I mean, music is super powerful for multiple reasons. One, it acts as a mnemonic, right? We hear the song, we hear the jingle, we can make the association. So it's a memory aid, which is great. But also, you know, people don't think about music as marketing content. And that's the thing. Like, someone said this before, that like we only call things we don't like content. Like, no one goes to the movies, go, man, that was some great content I just saw. No one like listen to an album and say, man, Drake just dropped some really great content. No one does. Like, no one would ever call Ernest Hemingway a content creator. He'd probably punch you in the face, right? Like we don't do that. We call content things that we don't like, or things that are like their utility, like marketing content. But music is music. Music is enjoyable. We want to listen to music. We want to find new music that's aligned to our ideological dispositions when it comes to our taste in music, right? So that there's an easy way in, like it's an open door in. People are receptive to it, and finding ways to use music in beyond mnemonic avenues create great opportunity. So here's a good example. A few years ago, yeah, do you know Hamburger Helper?
No.
Hamburger Helper. It's maybe it's just here in the States. It's like it's like a dry good, like it's like pasta, dry pasta, and a seasoning, and you put it together in a skillet, put some water in it, add some meat.
Okay, okay, like a crock pot for hamburger or something.
Exactly.
Okay,
right, like hamburger and
okay,
pasta with seasoning. They call it Hamburger Helper. I grew up on it. It was big when I was a kid. Hamburger Helper was that deal.
okay.
But in like recent years, not so much. Like, not really. It's not very in vogue. So for 2016 April Fool's Day, April 1st, when brands and marketers are like, we're gonna do these gags, these pranks, Hamburger Helper decided to release a mixtape called Watch the Stove, a play on Jay-Z
Wow.
and Kanye West Watch the Throne. And they made a legit mixtape that sound really, really good. It sounded like everything on the radio. Like it sounded like the Migos, like everything on the radio. But the music, the lyrics were like instructions for how to use the product. They were like communicating the value propositions. They're like, I whip it, I whip it, I whip it, I stir it, I stir it, I stir it. It's like, what's going on here? It was streamed over 2 million times in the first 18 hours, downloaded over 40,000 times on Daft Piff, which is where you go get hip hop mixtapes, right? It like, this is what we mean about cultural product. This was beyond marketing communications. This became ways that people made their culture material. And music is an important part of the cultural characteristics that we use to describe who we are, to communicate who we are, and to continue to solidify and cement who we are based on our descriptions. So for marketers, music is it's a perfect vehicle. It's a great vehicle when used well. Yeah, I think this is a matter of storytelling and transmedia storytelling. So to your point earlier, this is like, what story is the brand telling? Like, stories are the most powerful vehicle for us to communicate information, which is why music is as powerful as it is, because music is a storytelling art form, right? The stories that we tell, this is how we teach religion. This is how we teach morality through like folklore, right? Like, what's the boy who cried wolf? Like, don't lie, because, when you're really in trouble, no one's gonna be able to help you, right? We teach kids how to be good people through the stories that we tell. And we communicate with each other through stories. Stories are the most powerful vehicle for marketing, hands down. Stories are a cultural vehicle to make it so powerful. When we think about transmedia storytelling, the idea here is that there are different vehicles, different avenues, different media that provide opportunities for us to tell stories. And we tell the right story for the right vehicle or the right media. For instance, I'm a fan of The Matrix. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. And The Matrix wasn't just those three movies. It's 1 through 3, from Reloaded to Revolutions. Like, The Matrix was like this universe. There was the movies, there was the video games, there was the anime, there was the comic books. All of these things told different stories about the Matrix universe. Like, the video game was about the Nebuchadnezzar, like the expeditions they had before they met Neo. The anime was about completely different characters. All these things together told the massive encompassing story that is the Matrix. Now, we all didn't see all the pieces. Some of us did. Some of us came through the door of the movie. Some saw the movie, was like, oh, I want to check out the anime, or I want to check out the video game. The same thing goes when it comes to brand. Stories that you tell, each one of these different vehicles become ways by which you tell the broader story of the brand. Some stories are best. Some are best on Instagram. Some are best on Twitter. Some are best via your blog. Some are best via podcast. And the idea is that all these different stories together paint this rich tableau of who you are. And the difference between like a major brand and your startup is really just money. And let me tell you, money don't buy you love. There are a lot of brands who spend a lot of money trying to get people to love them and to, you know, have these brand affinities that doesn't work. Even they're running television, all these other things. Because love is about relationships. It's about connection. And every brand, every musician, they all start with fan zero. Everybody starts at zero, right? The only difference for a smaller company is that you got to go door to door, where a major company gets to yell out loud to lots of people. But at the core, we're doing the same thing. How do we make connections and leverage those connections to propagate across the network structure? Totally. So this is a Warhol print, right? So Warhol did this famous line of visual art that was social commentary, that like, you know, that every, you know, fame is sort of a commodity, right? And just like a celebrity can be famous, you know, even these massively produced products like Campbell, a commodity can be quote unquote famous. Is a very, very sharp social commentary by Andy Warhol. And so as an advertiser, like I love this piece. I mean, I love pop art to begin with, but I love this piece in particular because it sort of keeps me like, check your ego, buddy. Like check your ego. You're selling like commodities. Check your email, your ego. You're not curing cancer here, guy. This is just advertising.
Okay, but I got also that there must be something with between art, advertising, product, story, and everything. So, okay, that was just I was curious.
You were on it though. But again, another example of cultural product, right? Like, you know, I'm using the brand in this artistic fashion to communicate something about my ideological subscription.